Welcome back to Cut the Chat Life Science Insider Podcast, Season 2, Episode 4, hosted by Seuss Plus CEO and co-founder Sabine Hutchison. Cut the Chat promises to facilitate the conversations you've been dying to hear and tackle the real crux of our industry's challenges. So let's get today's episode started. Let's get to it. Let's cut the chat.
In this episode of Cut the Chat Life Science Insider, I'm interviewing Christina Busmalis. She's a leading expert at the intersection of AI and biotech, and together we'll explore the transformative potential of AI in drug development, discussing its promising applications and the challenges that still need to be overcome. Christina is going to share her insights from her experience, offering practical advice for biotech companies looking to explore the possible uses of AI in their processes and looking at future trends. This episode explores the reality versus the hype of AI in biotech, providing a wide-ranging perspective at how this technology can shape the future of drug development. So let's get to it and cut the chat. Christina Busmalis is an accomplished technical and sales executive with more than 30 years' experience in a career focused mainly on the healthcare and life science industry, specifically big pharma and biotech. And most recently, Christina was the Chief Revenue Officer at BenevolentAI, an AI-augmented drug discovery company, and she's also the non-executive board member on the AO Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the care of patients with musculoskeletal injuries and pathologies. Christina has also held executive leadership positions at Google Cloud, IBM Watson Health, and IBM. Christina is a computer scientist by education and a consultant by trade. She's an industry thought leader on disruptive technologies for the life science industry. And she's a frequent speaker at pharma and digital health-focused conferences across Europe, where I first met her. And during my chats with Christina, I've experienced that she explodes with innovative ideas, and she loves to find creative solutions for her stakeholders, focusing on digital, data, analytical, AI, and cloud transformations. And Christina happily lives in Zurich, Switzerland. Hello, Christina. It is so good to see you again. And I'm just thrilled that you're with me today. We met earlier this year, I think June it was, right? At the HBA conference. I remember listening to people at my table and they were like, wow, she's doing a really good job of making this very palatable and understandable for everyone. So kudos to you. I don't know if I ever told you that after meeting you for the first time, but everyone was very excited about your talk. And so I'm just really happy you're here and have taken some time to be on Cut the Chat.
Great. I'm happy to be here. Really excited to have this conversation.
And off we go into this wild, wild world of AI and biotechnology. So this is your world right now, isn't it? I think you have a long history. So I'm really excited in this topic of at least data and technology. So we're really looking forward to hearing a bit about you and where did it all start?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I started in tech when I was quite young. So 8 years old, I started to program, which I give my age away. That was back in the early 80s. My father was a math teacher and a computer science teacher at a high school. And every break, he'd bring home a computer. I didn't have any games for the computer, so I just had to play with it in different ways. And so did some basic programming as time went on and, build lines across the screen, which back then took a lot of lines of code. Now it's done for you.
Yeah.
And just love technology. So I studied it, through college as well. And I didn't do the typical tech path, I guess, which has been a programmer, because I actually didn't want to stare at a screen all day long, which is kind of funny because nowadays you screen all day long.
Yeah, just see different things, don't we? You're right.
But I would say, over my career, how did I get into the AI field? Actually, I did some AI programming back in the 90s when I was still at university, but that was in early stages, very, very early stages. But I would say there's 5 key career pivots. One was coming to Europe. Mm-hmm. I came to Zurich, which should have been for a 2-year stay, but I'm still here, and that's a long time later. And, I guess the next one was really moving away from pure consulting, IT management consulting, into more of a sales role with IBM, a sales management role, and really into the life science industry. That was what I would say probably my biggest pivot was really getting into the life science industry and seeing that there was so much that needed to be done with technology. Mm-hmm. I spent the rest of my career in the data and analytics space. Moved away from being more on the tech side later in around 2017 to run the life science business for Watson Health and IBM, which was the first AI-based practice of IBM. And it was great. I was responsible for Europe and Asia. I was doing a role that, I was never a sales rep. So I was all of a sudden leading a whole team of sales leaders and sales reps to bring AI solutions to market. I then, left IBM and joined Google. So I went from old tech to new tech, realized there's not much of a difference. So there's just like the other side. And then I really did the jump into moving out of a pure tech company and joining a biotech company, which was BenevolentAI last fall. And for me, it was a really interesting move because I moved away from a tech supplier into the biotech pharma industry to be a biotech company, but it was still a company that had a tech side.
Right.
So, they find themselves, are they a biotech? Are they a tech bio? I mean, just as a 2-sentence intros, they do an AI drug discovery based solutions. They go up to bringing the medicines in clinical trials and then ideally out license them to someone forward. But it was, I took responsibility as their chief revenue officer to, dealing with out licensing of potential pipeline assets, selling, collaboration research initiatives with pharmaceutical companies. And they also had some AI-based software that they developed themselves and we bring that to market. So I really like the move from going from a big tech company to a small biotech company of a couple hundred people as well, right?
Yeah, big shift.
Yeah.
And also this combination, right? Bringing the AI into clinical research, which is, AI is just so prevalent today. Well, everyone has become ChatGPT, I think kind of has kicked off a lot of things, I guess, for the everyday kind of person that doesn't focus on this. But we forget that this has been going on for a long time. This is not something that just started a couple of years ago.
That's correct. Absolutely. I mean, 1950s, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Way back when they started doing artificial intelligence, and just the capability has increased and gotten better and better because of data and processing. Those are the two things that have really accelerated, especially with generative AI, is really around having, so much volume of data and having the technology and to really accelerate that.
Yeah, definitely. That is so true. And then what is fascinating is this whole connection between AI and biotechnology, which is something that you've obviously been focusing on at Benevolent. And I'm curious, how is that? And how many organizations are you seeing that are focusing on looking at drug development and incorporating and actually running their companies?
It's a good question because I think I haven't done this research. I'm going to make an hypothesis that someone's going to have to prove me wrong.
We're going to have to fact check it.
Every company, throughout the entire drug development process, right? AI sits someplace everywhere.
True.
So whether it's machine learning, whether it's really, really strong advanced analytics, predictive analytics, somewhere AI is being used. And so if you think about, in early drug discovery, whether it's identifying novel targets, which again was what we did at Benevolent, assessing those targets, validating them, there's AI pieces everywhere. And then if you go into clinical trials, you could have, where it's protocol design or patient recruitment or site selection. Again, AI is being used. So, would I say that it's brand new? No, but it's in pieces of existing processes today that you see AI there already being used in very small areas.
That's true. It's quite siloed, isn't it? If you look at it that way.
I would say it's siloed or it's fragmented, as you could say, right?
Yeah.
But, there's been an implementation of bringing AI or machine learning into various areas within the drug discovery process and drug development.
Yeah. Looking at going into the clinic and what you're saying too around the clinical trials, you're right about protocol writing support, also feasibilities, looking at where in what countries, what investigators, so starting to use it to determine a lot of these points when you're running clinical trials. And what about a step before? So if you look in the development side, where are you seeing the biggest impact being made there?
I think what you're hearing mostly is still in that AI for drug discovery, right? And there's a lot of companies that are out there, right? So again, BenevolentAI was, infusing AI across the discovery process. So from novel target identification through the hit, through the, ring molecule. They've accelerated the process, which typically takes 5 years, down to 3 years. So, if you would say, where is AI being used the most? I think it's acceleration mode at the moment. Separate from, yes, it's being used to identify novel targets, right? That's the second step. It's more of accelerating at this stage, with I think is coming out. But going from 5 years down to around 3 years, already cuts something into reduces 2 years of that
right
in your development cycle as we see today. But this is not new. So these companies like Benevolent, there's other companies out there. There's a lot of companies out there. You see now consolidation in the market where, Recursion recently acquired Extentia. So there's a lot of consolidation happening, but there's a lot of companies doing similar but different, right? Everyone's doing something slightly different, but coming out with the same type of area. So I think that's where you've seen the most focus. Now, where I find that challenging today is we haven't yet proven it works.
Right.
Because it's at the patient. Right. But we're in a lot of phase 2 trials. A lot of companies are, in silico medicine. Other ones have, there's dozens of trials that are in phase 2, dozens of molecules in phase 2, but no one's yet in the market.
Yeah.
No one's yet at the side. So until we really get them there,
We don't know.
we don't know.
Yeah.
Now, are we confident this is the way to go forward? Probably, but it's not yet proven that it definitely is, right?
Yeah, that's true. And do you see also, because we're in an industry that is fairly slow in a lot of areas, and we're talking about acceleration, do you or have you experienced also regulations and regulatory bodies being able to handle that acceleration and work along with the speed that you're seeing in some of the development?
I think what's happening still today, in my opinion, is things have not changed, right? So you have to still go through all those steps with the FDA or regulatory authority, whether you want to be IND ready, whether what you need for phase 1 completion, phase 2, et cetera, et cetera. They're not blocking it by any means. They're not saying, oh, you can't use technology to help you, but you still need to do all the paperwork and all the information that is required to get there. So it doesn't just change the process, right? The process has changed. We've just infused different ways of doing things. I've also seen, we talked about, patient recruitment. Years ago, back at IBM in Watson Health, we had a clinical trial matching solution. It technically worked, right? It would take inclusion, exclusion criteria, match them against patients, and identify the best patients for what you want to run. The challenge we had was not the technology; it was getting the parties together. So having 3 contracts, right, with provider side, with the pharma side, obviously with IBM as the technology provider, that took a long time. So if you just to do that effort, you could actually do your recruitment. Right. So you got to balance the two.
Yeah, that's so true.
It wasn't that it was technology hindering. It was more that companies weren't used to it yet. Right. And so that initial, this is the first time we're doing it sort of thing, 10 years ago. So.
Yeah, we see that as well. Sometimes just getting a 3-way CDA signed can take months.
And maybe, this is probably the benefit of biotech versus big pharma. Big pharma is more challenging, but can the biotechs take that and move faster?
And if you look at from the vendor side too, there's some pretty significant vendors that are out there as well that also, you can struggle changing processes, adapting processes, and making things happen quickly. So that's a really good point too, because not only looking at from the research and development side from the sponsors, but also the vendors, they also are going to have to adapt to AI in the industry. And what are your experiences with that?
So I think the CROs, if we want to say, they are the pivotal piece for the biotechs, right? To adapt the process, right? So again, AI can be used very early in discovering, different things. So that maybe not the CROs, right? But when you go into, we want to now take this medicine, whatever it is, and bring it through the clinical trial, the development process. Most biotechs outsource that to CROs.
Right. True.
So, and I would love to find the companies that aren't, because I think those are the ones that could be the trailblazers, because they're the ones that maybe will say, hey, we can now change this process, and not just change it, transform it, transform the whole drug development process with AI being a catalyst to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think having the sponsors and the suppliers, I'm not saying anything bad about a CRO. A CRO is a people business mainly, right?
Yeah.
They will bring in the innovation, the technology when they kind of have to. How do you force them to do that? Or how do you, as a biotech company, do it yourself? And there is a plus and minus for that, right? Because there's a big effort, these trials and going through. But that I think is, it's not to say it's a hindrance, it's not a block, but it is in some way, it's a dependency that we haven't yet fixed, right? Especially in the biotech. Again, big pharma, they can say we can do it ourselves, right? So you see that visual endpoints, all those things, they're doing them themselves. The big ones, small companies, it's hard unless you partner with the big ones to get the funding, right? So this is a challenge that come up.
Yeah, true. And it's interesting you talk about the digital endpoints, because we're actually working on a project with Dime specifically about this as well. And we're trying to really involve more biotechs in this space as well to start utilize. Actually, a lot of them already utilize it, but also to get their voices out more around the digital endpoints and incorporating that into their clinical trials and their protocols as well.
Yeah, it's a good example of, again, the technology, the sensors. We're moving a little bit away from AI, but it doesn't matter because it's all the same in some way. They're all connected.
It's connected,
right? The sensors there's more and more capabilities are getting out there, right? So the technology is probably not going to be the blocker at some stage. It's going to be more, how do you get the interdisciplinary communication agreement that this is benefiting, and how do you make sure that the data is valid and accurate and right. Those sort of things. But it could change a lot of different diseases where you don't have good clinical endpoints, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, heart failure, what's your endpoint?
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
I think there's going to be and again, where does AI play that point? It could be a different thing. It can be in the sensors themselves. It can be in getting all this data and getting insights from the data. All those areas are going to be linked to the artificial intelligence as well as it goes.
Yeah, so true. One of our previous conversations, as we've had a couple of chats, obviously, since we met, and we talked a bit about the scientists not trusting, or cannot, maybe not that they would love to trust it, but cannot completely trust AI in the drug development process. And I find that that's really interesting as well. And I'm curious to hear about how that you've seen impact the process, and what do you think needs to happen to change that?
So trusted AI, I think that's it's a really interesting topic, right? Because there has been, if you haven't made the decision yourself, how do you trust it? So
how do you trust it?
How do you as an individual believe any information you get, right? You research it, right? And you make sure you're confident what you hear from somebody is accurate. And that's the same thing with scientists. So you can see, I'll go back to these AI drug discovery companies again, whether it's Benevolent or other ones, it's the same. If it's Benevolent, they use their platform to identify potential novel targets, right? It's not that it for a specific disease based on multimodal data. So taking all this data together, whether it's publications or patient data, different types of different data, and you can get inferences and information that can potentially link to new targets. So the system doesn't give you one target. It gives you a list of prioritized targets for disease area based. And then, it's a scientist's job to go and validate this and to assess these, right? So you can't just, here's the list. Here you go. This
here you go.
That's not the case. And that's why
right.
The process to get that list doesn't take very long. The process to validate and assess the list, and then get down to validate and then go into wet labs is where the time is still, right? And, in that list, there's not going to be everything's great. You're going to throw away a lot of stuff because the potential evidence that the system would provide is not providing, is good, but not good enough, or it's already out there. Someone's doing it, something, whatever the biological reason. I think it comes back to biology is complex.
Right. It's so complex, right?
And then again, I'm not a biologist. I'll never say I am. I don't have the background. And, technology is helping to accelerate that scientist to get someplace faster, right? And I think, I've always talked about AI, actually back at IBM 10 years ago, we would say AI is not artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, right? Now that word is obvious, right? Everyone says, we're not replacing humans, we're AI is using, is to help them do their job better and faster. The trust aspect is important because I think, especially as scientists, if you see too much garbage, you're going to not trust it, right?
Yeah.
It's not perfect. And I don't think it will be perfect. Things like AlphaFold have helped, you have the protein modeling done, folding done in advance. No, but you still have to validate stuff. You still, as a scientist, have to ensure that the evidence that it's saying is good enough.
Right.
And, I wish there was an easy way to say, hey, we're going to change it and make it from this AI is going to change and everyone's going to trust it. But we're not there yet, right? Especially in today's world with generative AI, where there are hallucinations. You can manage it; it's manageable, but it takes humans to help manage it. It just doesn't happen overnight. That change.
Interesting talking about the scientists. What's your experience in actually hiring? So to bring people in that have that mindset as well, that are like, okay, we can use it. We still need to test. We still need to validate. But have you seen a difference also in the type of individuals, or maybe the people that are coming out of universities now? Are the mindsets different?
I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's something. There's always an age thing, right? But I don't think this. And if I look again at my experience at Benevolence, we had scientists of varying ages. They weren't super young. There were some young people. There were some old people. There's some in the middle, right? And so there wasn't an age thing here. I think it's the willingness to approach things differently. We found very good people coming from other biotechs, from pharma, from university, right? And I think there are a lot of people out there that are willing to look at things slightly different than maybe was done 10 years ago. And that's probably, if I'm, again, have no evidence of base of hypothesis, but I think that's probably changing more and more as well with people coming out of university.
Which actually fits to science, doesn't it? Because it's all about curiosity. I mean, that's why I studied chemistry too. I was curious. I wanted to understand how do things work.
And, I think especially the majors that you get, the university degrees you get now, bioinformatics is becoming just standard,
true.
Right? And that was not, it was quite rare back then. You would either do biology or you do technology. Now you do both that are coming out. So I think it's just going to continue to accelerate that way. But there is still in most of these AI drug discovery companies, you have a tech side and you have a science side. Yeah. How do you meld them together is really important. we were able to do that quite well at Benevolent. But, it is the tech people have to learn that not everything is perfect on the tech side. And the science people have to learn to start to trust. And when it doesn't work, to communicate why it didn't work. So then they can retrofit.
Really? So how did you make that happen? I think just in general, it's difficult to bring two different groups or mindsets of individuals together and to get them to really collaborate. And what was your secret sauce there?
Not me, I would say, because I came later in the organization. I think it was leadership that really brought that together over the years, right? Of having that passion and having the right, chief scientific officer, a great CTO, a great, the CTO, and those kind of things to bring those capabilities together. What I saw when I joined as a chief revenue officer was how do you glue it? How do you glue it to make it sellable to drive revenue, right? Because that was my job, was to bring the revenue side of things, and that was it was workable, right? Because we'd always get, when we did different sales pitches and things like that, is getting both on the table, because your potential clients want to hear from the scientists as well as from the side of things. Story work. But,
diverse group at the table. That's again, that diverse topic comes up. So true. So what do you see? What's in the future? What if you pull up your magic ball? Where are we going with this? And maybe even not in the super long term, but if you look at the next 5 years.
I think so. Again, we talked about, we've had AI hit the processes at a very low level, right? So fragmentation of we haven't yet transformed drug development with AI. We start to transform pieces of drug development, different products. I would hope over time that we start to really. I would love to see somebody reinvent, and that's got to be aligned with the regulatories and everything. I mean, it's not one company, but I would love to see some way to reinvent the whole drug discovery process and drug development process. One thing I see, but I don't think it's 5 years away, I think it's a little bit longer, is digital twins, right? So I think that digital twins, they've been around a while, right? So in manufacturing and supply chain, how do you simulate what you're going to do, what you're going to produce, right? Yeah. And you're now seeing it come into healthcare
quite a bit, I think. Yeah.
So, imagine, today we give a therapy hoping it works, right? I mean, get more and more, obviously genetics and the more and more we know the patient and we know we get more and more confidence it's going to work. But, we still go through that, especially in clinical trials, we go through that process of how will it work and who will it work for, right? And it's a long, painful process, for the individual. So when can we get to the point that we can simulate clinical trials with digital twins? Up to the point that we go into patients, and I think you always have to go into patients. I don't think that's okay. But can you go into patients when you're at that high level of confidence it's going to work for that type of patient? Not for all patients, of course, not but type of patient. And, have a high probability of success. I think that's when we've really been able to change, because maybe there's not all those phases of clinical trials anymore. Maybe there's no longer placebos, ideally.
Right.
And being able to use more and more digital endpoints, right, and all those sort of things come together really around that. And you're right, it is being used already. I mean, I think Johns Hopkins University is running a clinical trial, creating a whole computational model of a heart, right, to deal with fatal arrhythmia. So they have a 3D view of that individual's heart. So everyone has something different, right? So it's on the computer. They simulate the operation before the procedure, before they go through it. And then they actually go and treat each individual patient differently. And we're not there yet, but I think that's where, can we get to a point that we do development of medicines completely different than today? I don't know if it's 5 years.
Yeah, maybe a little bit longer, but it is coming. I mean, look at the warp speed that we're at right now. I mean, it feels like warp speed with the technologies and what's happening in the industry. So, yeah.
And you think about it, COVID helped accelerate that.
There's true.
The negative, of course, of COVID, right? So there's the positive, how we get everyone together, but we kind of took a step back again. I think since COVID, of not keeping that momentum.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and to trust in ourselves and to keep moving forward. That's so true. So, what about you? The next 5 or 10 years, are there areas that you want to focus more in? Is there something like drawing your attention?
It's a great question. I wish I had as a salesperson, I should have direct answers. Get my next job. I mean, I'm still very passionate on we talked about passion already. I'm still very enthusiastic around the industry of life sciences, but I'd love to see us move faster, and I'd love to be part of that. Right, as you know, I've been in the industry now for a little over 20 years, in life science industry about 20 years, working with AI somewhat or something for 12 years. We're making progress, but not fast, right? You know, it was funny, back at the HBA conference, there was a woman that spoke about, she was amazing. And I remember at the end of her talk, she said, "This is not for me because I'm going to retire soon, but for the next leaders, you have to do." And I was thinking, like, I don't want that to be me. I want to actually
be part of that change. Yeah. So you have a few more years.
But I think staying in, you know, really focusing on how technology, not just AI, because I think technology, I think AI is just one piece of technology, but how we can continue to bring technology into healthcare and into the life sciences to really, you know, all of us be healthier as we go forward. Like, I want to be part of that journey. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic. I know you will be. Yeah. And it's interesting if you think about the biotechs that are out there and that want to start and that want to take more steps. What are the top 3 Christina tips that you would give them to take a bigger step into this AI space in their R&D?
Again, if we look at the R&D process, so again, not the innovation that they're bringing potentially, but the process itself, you know, choose the CRO. If you're going to go down the CRO path, which is my most likely thing, choose a CRO that's going to be a trailblazer and maybe get on that bandwagon, or partner. You know, ultimately, most of these companies partner with a big pharma. Find a pharma company that can help you drive what you want to do and go forward as well. I think that's the interesting thing out there. It's an exciting time, right? But you know, there is that thing of you can't do it alone. And if you want to be a trailblazer, you're going to have to find the right companies to bring into your ecosystem and take the time to do that versus just let's just outsource it to XYZ, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And knowledge sharing. I think that's such a key thing. And I think sometimes we tend to hold information and great things close and not necessarily share them as much. And I think that has such a huge impact as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, unfortunately, the industry has driven that sort of closeness, you know, closed door kind of way. And I don't know. It may come down to individuals that are more interested to share knowledge than the companies driving that. Because you're right. I think, and again, that's what COVID did, right? Companies came together to get something right.
Exactly.
And work through it. And yeah.
Christina, maybe we're going to have to start like some roundtable discussions or next project to get people talking and sharing information.
Those trailblazer biotech companies, what do they want? Right? How do they want to not just be innovative of the medicine that they've identified, but as a company of, you know,
and to the greater good. So you're right, to their organization, of course, that's what it's about. They have to be successful, and then ultimately it's to the patients and bring something there. But how do we come together to blaze more trails?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good trailblazers era.
Yeah, like that. All right. Well, we'll have to see if that sparks. If there are any trailblazers out there that want to be part of something, let us know, because it is true. I mean, we hear a lot of CEOs, a lot of individuals get together for roundtables, and maybe it's setting up like this kind of this safe environment where you can go, and that's your place to talk about these kind of things and to look how you can leverage each other. I think that's so often we don't have to all be in this alone. You know, there's so many great things out there.
Especially the drug development process is the same. I mean, okay, it's different if you're in cell and gene therapy. There's different. I mean, the process itself is different, but it's the same for the medicines, right? It's not that, you know, it's everyone needs to get faster. Everyone needs to get cheaper, right? Versus one company's going to do it and no one else is going to follow, right? They're all eventually follow the same approach.
That's true. Well, some more food for thought for me and some things to ponder. As always, I think every conversation I have with you, I leave and you definitely get my wheels spinning and thinking, Christina. I'm like, what can I do now? So thank you so much. It has been to have this conversation, and I'm sure we could go off in lots of different directions. So we'll see if we have you back again, and maybe we focus on a bit of a different area. And to everyone listening, Christina, if you have any suggestions on any books or articles or things that you find super helpful, we'll have you share those with us, and then we'll share those in the notes of the podcast. That'd be great. It's always good to learn from others about what's a valuable read.
I'll do that. Great. No, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation and happy to talk again. And wish you a good happy birthday.
Thank you. You too. Wishing you a good week ahead.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Cut the Chat Life Science Insider. Make sure you're following Seuss Plus on LinkedIn and be the first to know about upcoming podcasts. See you again soon.